The heavens are not silent anymore. There comes a moment in every chosen person's life when time itself begins to tremble, when destiny stands at the door, when God no longer whispers, but speaks with thunder. And this is that moment. Chosen one, hear me carefully. God said these next 3 days, May 16th, 17th and 18th, will decide everything. Not because the calendar is magical, not because the world understands what heaven is doing, but because there are seasons when God turns years of pain into moments of breakthrough. You cried in secret. You fought battles nobody saw. You smiled while your spirit was bleeding. People judged your delay, but they never understood your warfare. But heaven was watching. Every tear, every sleepless night, every betrayal, every prayer whispered when your strength was gone. God counted it all. And now the atmosphere is shifting. This is not just another weekend. This is not just another sunrise. This is a divine intersection between suffering and destiny. Some people around you will sleep through these days. Some will mock what they cannot spiritually discern. But the chosen feel it. Something is moving. You have been under pressure because purpose creates resistance. You have been attacked because darkness recognizes what you carry before people do. The enemy tried to bury you under fear, tried to break your confidence, tried to convince you that you were forgotten. But listen to me. If God kept you alive through every storm, then your assignment is not finished. The pain did not destroy you because it was preparing you. There are doors about to open that no human can shut. There are answers coming that will silence years of confusion. There are chains breaking in these next 3 days. But hear this warning carefully, chosen one. Do not let fear talk louder than faith. These next days require spiritual focus. Separate yourself from distractions. Guard your mind. Protect your peace. Pray like never before. Because when heaven moves, distractions increase. Some relationships will fall apart. Some people will walk away. Some masks will finally come off. Do not chase what God is removing. Sometimes God has to empty your hands before he places destiny inside them. You asked God for elevation. But elevation requires separation. And yes, it hurts. It hurts when people misunderstand you. It hurts when loyalty is not returned. It hurts when you carry visions nobody else believes in. But Noah looked crazy before the rain came. David was overlooked before the crown came. Joseph was betrayed before the palace came. Chosen people are always misunderstood before they are revealed. So do not quit now. Not after surviving everything that should have broken you. Not after praying through nights when nobody checked on you. Not after carrying faith while your world was collapsing. The devil wanted you exhausted before your breakthrough arrived. But God says, stand still and watch what I do. These next 3 days are not about coincidence. They are about alignment. Heaven is positioning people, removing obstacles, closing old chapters, activating hidden favor. Something is ending. Something is beginning. And your obedience in this moment matters more than you realize. Do not ignore the voice of God. Do not ignore conviction. Do not ignore the signs heaven has been sending, because destiny often arrives quietly before it changes everything loudly. Chosen one. This is your confirmation. You are not crazy. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are being prepared. And when these 3 days pass, you will not be the same person. The fire you survived will become the power you walk in. The tears you cried will water the future God promised you. And the people who doubted your calling will witness the hand of God on your life. The heavens have a way of speaking when the earth becomes too loud. There are moments when God interrupts the ordinary rhythm of life and places a burden on the spirit of a chosen person. Not everyone understands these moments. Not everyone can discern when heaven is sending a warning before a major shift takes place. But deep inside, the chosen feel it. They sense when something is changing in the atmosphere. They recognize when the pressure around them is not normal, when the attacks become heavier, when confusion tries to invade the mind without explanation. These are not random events. These are signs that something spiritual is approaching. There are seasons when God allows silence, and there are seasons when He releases a warning. A warning is not meant to destroy you. A warning is proof that God still cares enough to speak before the storm arrives. Throughout history, heaven has always warned people before transformation came. Before the flood, Noah received a warning. Before Egypt was shaken, Moses received a warning. Before kingdoms collapsed, prophets heard the voice of God trembling through the Spirit. The chosen are never left completely blind. God always releases signs before destiny changes direction. Many people think warnings only come through dramatic miracles or loud voices from the sky, but often the warning comes through deep unrest in the spirit. It comes through sleepless nights when your soul feels troubled for reasons you cannot explain. It comes through moments when everything around you feels unstable, as if the foundations beneath your feet are shifting. The chosen person starts noticing unusual patterns. Certain doors suddenly close, certain relationships begin to break apart, certain habits become unbearable. The things that once distracted you no longer satisfy your soul, because heaven is trying to get your attention. God knows how easily people become consumed by comfort. Sometimes comfort becomes the greatest enemy of purpose. When life becomes predictable, many stop seeking God deeply. They stop listening carefully. They begin moving through life spiritually asleep. But a chosen person cannot remain asleep forever because destiny demands awakening. God will allow discomfort to shake the spirit awake. He will allow pressure to increase until the chosen finally realize that heaven is calling them higher. The warning from heaven is not always about destruction. Sometimes it is about preparation. God warns because He is about to move someone into a different season. There are moments when heaven begins separating people from old mindsets, old environments, and old attachments because the next level of purpose cannot carry the weight of the previous season. Many people pray for elevation without understanding the cost of transformation. Elevation requires surrender. It requires obedience. It requires the courage to walk away from what feels familiar. The chosen often suffer in isolation because few people understand what God is doing inside them. Others may see the outward struggle, but they cannot see the spiritual battle taking place beneath the surface. They cannot see the warfare happening in the mind at midnight. They cannot hear the silent prayers whispered through tears. They cannot feel the weight of purpose pressing against the soul. Chosen people carry burdens that ordinary people may never understand, because heaven places assignments on them that demand spiritual endurance. There are times when the enemy recognizes a person's calling before the person fully understands it themselves. That is why attacks sometimes begin early. Fear increases. Doubt grows louder. Rejection follows them from place to place. Betrayal becomes familiar. The enemy hopes that constant discouragement will convince the chosen to abandon their purpose before it fully manifests. Darkness understands the danger of a surrendered soul. A person fully aligned with God becomes a threat to every chain, every lie, and every prison built by fear. The warning from heaven often arrives during moments when the chosen feel weakest. God speaks when exhaustion reaches its limit because human strength must decrease before spiritual dependence increases. Some people only see God deeply when everything else fails. When resources disappear, when relationships collapse, when plans fall apart, suddenly the spirit becomes desperate enough to listen. God knows how to remove distractions that keep people from hearing Him clearly. Many chosen people spend years asking why life feels harder for them than it seems for others. They compare their journey to people around them, who appear to move through life without resistance. But purpose attracts warfare. A person carrying spiritual significance will face battles designed to break focus and weaken faith. The greater the assignment, the greater the resistance. The enemy does not waste energy attacking what poses no threat. The attacks against the chosen are often proof that heaven has marked them for something greater. The warning from heaven is also a call to return fully to God. Many people have drifted spiritually without realizing it. They still speak about faith, but their hearts have become distant. Their prayer life has weakened. Their sensitivity to the Spirit has faded. They have allowed the noise of the world to replace the voice of God. But when heaven sends a warning, it is an invitation to awaken before opportunities are lost. God gives people moments to realign before major transitions occur. There is a dangerous thing that happens when someone ignores repeated warnings from God. The heart slowly becomes hardened. Conviction weakens. Spiritual blindness increases. A person begins normalizing the very things that once troubled their spirit. This is why discernment matters. The chosen must be sensitive enough to recognize when God is trying to speak through circumstances, through conviction, through sudden interruptions, and through the shifting atmosphere around their lives. Not every warning feels comfortable. Sometimes God will expose hidden truths that people desperately tried to avoid. He will reveal the real intentions of people close to you. He will uncover distractions disguised as blessings. He will allow masks to fall from faces you trusted. The pain of revelation can feel unbearable, but exposure is mercy. God cannot heal what remains hidden in darkness. He cannot elevate someone who continues ignoring the very chains holding them captive. The chosen often stand at the edge of transformation without realizing how close they are to breakthrough. Right before a major shift, warfare usually intensifies. Fear grows louder because the enemy senses what is approaching. Confusion increases because darkness wants to cloud discernment. Delays multiply because resistance attempts to exhaust faith. But heaven never sends warnings without also preparing strength for those willing to listen. God does not expose battles without also providing the power needed to survive them. The spirit of the chosen begins feeling restless because deep inside, they know time is moving quickly. There comes a moment when delay is no longer an option. Decisions suddenly carry greater weight. Obedience becomes urgent. Prayer becomes necessary instead of optional. The warning from heaven creates awareness that life cannot continue carelessly. Something eternal is connected to the next steps taken by the chosen soul. There is always a battle before the breakthrough. Long before the blessing becomes visible, war begins in the unseen realm. Many people celebrate the victory, but never understand the suffering that came before it. They admire the strength of a chosen person without realizing how many nights that person spent fighting invisible battles alone. Breakthrough is expensive. It costs comfort, pride, sleep, certainty, and sometimes even relationships. Nothing powerful is born without resistance. The chosen often wonder why life becomes harder the closer they move toward purpose. They pray for change, but instead of immediate answers, pressure increases. Doors close unexpectedly. Delays appear everywhere. People begin acting differently. Confusion surrounds their thoughts. It feels as though everything is falling apart at the exact moment they expected things to improve. But what looks like destruction is often spiritual preparation. God allows the battle because the battle reveals what is truly inside the soul. Pressure exposes what comfort hides. A person may think they trust God until life becomes painful. Faith sounds powerful when everything is stable, but true faith is revealed when the ground beneath your feet begins to shake. The chosen are often led into seasons where they have no choice except to depend completely on God. Resources disappear. Human support weakens. Familiar routines collapse. The spirit becomes stripped of distractions until only God remains. The enemy understands something many people fail to realize. Breakthrough changes everything. A person who steps fully into their calling becomes dangerous to darkness. One healed soul can heal others. One delivered person can break chains in entire generations. One obedient servant can shift the atmosphere in families, communities, and nations. This is why the battle intensifies before elevation. The enemy does not fear who you used to be. Darkness fears who you are becoming. Many chosen people mistake spiritual warfare for personal failure. They assume that hardship means God has abandoned them. But some battles only exist because heaven is preparing to trust them with greater responsibility. A soldier is not trained during peace. Strength is developed during resistance. Spiritual maturity is forged in difficult seasons. Every attack carries a lesson. Every betrayal reveals something. Every disappointment exposes where trust has been misplaced. The battle before breakthrough often begins in the mind. Fear becomes louder than usual. Doubt whispers constantly. Negative thoughts attack from every direction. The chosen may suddenly feel unworthy, forgotten, or exhausted. The enemy targets the mind because once the mind surrenders, the body follows. A defeated mind struggles to recognize opportunity. A discouraged spirit loses motivation to continue praying. This is why guarding the mind becomes a spiritual necessity. Some of the hardest battles happen in silence. The chosen may appear calm on the outside while internally fighting storms nobody can see. They carry burdens they cannot fully explain to others. They smile while secretly questioning if they still have strength left. They continue moving while parts of their spirit feel completely drained. There are moments when even prayer feels difficult because exhaustion has reached such deep levels. But God watches every hidden battle. Heaven sees every silent tear. Many people expect breakthrough to arrive quickly, but God often allows extended warfare, because endurance produces transformation. If breakthrough arrived too early, some people would enter their next season without the wisdom necessary to sustain it. Pain teaches lessons that comfort never could. Waiting develops patience. Rejection teaches discernment. Delays teach dependence on God, instead of dependence on human approval. The chosen are not only being prepared to receive blessings, they are being prepared to carry them responsibly. The battle before breakthrough also exposes counterfeit relationships. Not everyone assigned to your old season can enter your new one. Some people are connected to your comfort but not your destiny. God will often allow tension to reveal hidden motives. Loyalty becomes tested. Jealousy surfaces. Masks begin falling away. The chosen may feel heartbroken watching certain people leave, but separation is often necessary for spiritual growth. Some relationships become distractions disguised as support. People can unknowingly keep you attached to old versions of yourself that God is trying to remove. Familiarity can become dangerous when it prevents transformation. The chosen must learn that obedience to God sometimes requires walking alone for a season. Isolation is painful, but isolation also sharpens spiritual hearing. God separates people from noise, so they can finally hear His voice clearly. There are moments in the battle when quitting feels easier than continuing. The chosen may question whether the struggle is even worth it. They become tired of fighting battles nobody understands, tired of carrying responsibilities alone, tired of hoping through disappointment, tired of praying through silence. This is where many people surrender, right before their breakthrough arrives. They mistake temporary pressure for permanent defeat. But heaven often moves most powerfully when human strength reaches its limit. God allows situations that force the chosen to stop depending on themselves. Pride must break before true surrender can happen. Self-reliance must collapse before spiritual authority increases. The battle weakens the flesh, so the spirit can grow stronger. What feels like breaking is often rebuilding happening in hidden form. The enemy tries to convince the chosen that the warfare will never end. He magnifies the pain until the future looks hopeless. He reminds them constantly of past failures. He uses shame as a weapon. He whispers lies about their worth, their purpose, and their future. But lies only survive where truth is absent. This is why the chosen must remain connected to the voice of God during battle. One word from heaven can silence years of fear. There are spiritual attacks designed specifically to distract the chosen before breakthrough. Sudden temptations appear, old habits return. Emotional exhaustion increases. Unexpected conflicts arise. These attacks are rarely random. The enemy understands timing. He knows that distraction can delay destiny. A single careless decision during a critical season can create unnecessary pain. This is why discernment becomes essential during spiritual warfare. The battle before breakthrough is also a test of obedience. God watches how people respond under pressure. Anyone can worship during abundance, but true loyalty is revealed during suffering. Will the chosen continue trusting God when prayers seem unanswered? Will they remain faithful when everything feels uncertain? Will they obey even when they cannot yet see the outcome? Obedience during hardship creates spiritual authority. The chosen often carry scars from battles that nobody knows about. Betrayals changed them. Rejections wounded them. Delays exhausted them. Yet somehow they continued moving forward even when they felt empty. This endurance is not accidental. God strengthens those he calls. Every battle survived becomes evidence that heaven has sustained them all along. There are moments when the chosen feel surrounded by darkness, but even darkness cannot stop what God has ordained. The battle may delay breakthrough, but it cannot cancel destiny. What God has spoken over a life cannot be destroyed by fear, rejection, or spiritual opposition. The warfare only proves that something valuable is ahead. No one fights fiercely over something worthless. The intensity of the battle often reveals the magnitude of the breakthrough approaching. The chosen are not fighting alone, even when loneliness tries to convince them otherwise. Heaven stands with those walking through the fire. God never abandons his people during warfare. Even in silence, he is working behind the scenes. Even during delays, he is positioning events. Even during heartbreak, he is protecting the future. Every painful season carries hidden purpose. Every difficult moment is shaping the soul for what comes next. There are moments in life when everything changes within a short window of time. A single decision can redirect a future. A single act of obedience can unlock doors that remained closed for years. Many people think destiny unfolds slowly, but there are divine moments when heaven compresses seasons into days. 3 days can carry enough spiritual weight to alter the direction of an entire life. God often works through appointed moments, and the chosen must recognize when they are standing inside one. Throughout history, God has used short periods of time to create massive transformation. In 3 days Jonah walked through Nineveh carrying a warning that shook an entire city. In 3 days Esther prepared herself before standing before the king to save her people. In 3 days Jesus rose from the grave, defeating death itself. Heaven understands timing differently than humanity. What seems impossible through human effort can suddenly happen when God declares the time has come. The chosen often spend years in preparation, without realizing how close they are to breakthrough. They become accustomed to delay, struggle, and waiting. Pain becomes familiar. Disappointment becomes normal. Some even stop expecting miracles because they have suffered for so long. But heaven can suddenly interrupt years of suffering with one divine shift. God can restore in moments what life stole over decades. This is why spiritual awareness matters. The chosen cannot afford to sleep through critical moments. These 3 days carry spiritual significance because they represent decision, alignment, and movement. Every chosen person eventually arrives at a crossroads where remaining the same is no longer possible. God begins pressing the spirit to move differently, think differently, and live differently. The pressure increases because heaven is demanding transformation. What worked in the previous season will no longer sustain the next one. The first thing that happens during a decisive season is exposure. Hidden truths begin rising to the surface. God reveals what cannot continue into the next chapter. Some people suddenly show their true intentions. Certain environments start feeling toxic. Old habits become unbearable. Conviction grows stronger. The chosen begin sensing that something must change immediately. This exposure is uncomfortable because truth often destroys illusions people spent years protecting. Many chosen people struggle during these moments because they want breakthrough without surrender. They want elevation without separation. They pray for transformation while still holding on to the very things delaying it. But destiny demands sacrifice. God cannot pour new oil into old containers. Some relationships must end. Some mindsets must die. Some distractions must be removed completely. These decisions become unavoidable during critical spiritual windows. 3 days that decide everything are rarely comfortable. The chosen often feel intense emotional pressure during these moments, because the spirit recognizes the weight of what is happening. Fear and faith begin fighting for control. One voice says, "Stay comfortable, stay safe, stay familiar." Another voice whispers that destiny is waiting on the other side of obedience. This internal battle becomes exhausting because transformation always requires leaving behind a former version of yourself. The enemy understands the importance of decisive moments. This is why warfare increases whenever breakthrough draws near. Distractions multiply. Temptations appear unexpectedly. Emotional confusion intensifies. The enemy hopes the chosen will make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. He wants fear to overpower discernment. He wants exhaustion to create carelessness. He knows that if the chosen remain focused during these critical moments, chains that lasted for years may suddenly break. Many people miss divine moments because they underestimate them. They treat sacred seasons casually. They ignore conviction. They delay obedience. They assume tomorrow will carry the same opportunity as today. But certain doors only open during appointed times. There are moments when heaven moves with urgency. When God begins speaking repeatedly about change, obedience cannot be postponed indefinitely. The chosen often sense these moments before they fully understand them. A strange urgency develops in the spirit. Sleep patterns change. Prayer becomes heavier. Certain scriptures suddenly feel deeply personal. The atmosphere around life begins shifting. Some experience spiritual restlessness because their soul recognizes transition approaching. Others feel overwhelming conviction to separate from distractions and seek God more deeply. Heaven creates discomfort because comfort can delay obedience. These 3 days represent more than dates on a calendar. They symbolize a spiritual dividing line between old and new. The chosen are being asked to decide who they will become. Will they continue living bound by fear, doubt, and compromise? Or will they finally trust God enough to step fully into purpose? Destiny always requires courage because the future is never completely visible during transition. There are people standing one act of obedience away from breakthrough, one prayer away from freedom, one decision away from transformation. But fear keeps many trapped in cycles they were meant to outgrow. Fear convinces people that change is dangerous. Fear magnifies uncertainty until staying stuck feels safer than moving forward. Yet nothing grows in places where fear controls every decision. During decisive seasons, God often removes distractions forcefully. Relationships collapse unexpectedly. Plans fall apart. Certain opportunities disappear. At first this feels painful, but later the chosen realize God was protecting them from delays. Not everything lost was meant to remain. Some people are assignments only for temporary seasons. Some situations must end so purpose can fully emerge. The chosen must guard their spirit carefully during these moments, because voices around them may create confusion. People who do not understand spiritual timing may discourage necessary change. Some will call obedience foolish. Others will misunderstand the separation required for growth. But destiny has never been built through popular opinion. Noah looked foolish building an ark before rain existed. Abraham looked foolish leaving everything familiar. Faith often appears irrational before breakthrough becomes visible. There is also a deep spiritual cleansing that happens during decisive seasons. God begins dealing with hidden wounds, pride, unforgiveness, and emotional baggage. The chosen cannot carry old pain into a new season without it eventually becoming poison. Healing becomes necessary. Honesty becomes necessary. Surrender becomes necessary. God exposes internal struggles not to shame his people, but to free them. Some chosen people have spent years asking God for signs, while ignoring the ones already given. The constant pressure, the recurring conviction, the spiritual unrest, the repeated confirmations. These are all signals that heaven is speaking. God does not always shout. Sometimes, he repeats the same burden until the chosen finally respond. The weight of these 3 days comes from alignment. Heaven is positioning events, opportunities, relationships, and spiritual assignments. Things happening behind the scenes cannot yet be fully seen. God is arranging outcomes while the chosen are still praying for clarity. Breakthrough often begins invisibly before it manifests physically. What looks silent on earth may already be active in heaven. These moments also reveal who truly trusts God. When decisive seasons arrive, excuses lose their power. Delay becomes dangerous. Lukewarm faith becomes exposed. The chosen are called to move with boldness even when certainty feels incomplete. Faith means stepping forward before every answer appears. It means trusting God enough to obey, while still standing in uncertainty. Many people will look back later and realize those few days changed everything. A conversation shifted direction. A prayer unlocked peace. A surrender created freedom. A separation protected destiny. A moment of courage opened doors that fear kept closed for years. Divine moments often appear ordinary while they are happening, but their impact becomes undeniable afterward. The chosen are standing at the edge of transformation, whether they fully understand it or not. Heaven is calling for focus, obedience, discernment, and surrender. The atmosphere is shifting because purpose is pulling them forward. What happens during critical seasons often determines what the next years of life will look like. Every prayer, every decision, every act of obedience carries unusual weight. When heaven declares that the time has come, there comes a point in every chosen person's journey where God begins separating them from everything that can no longer go where he is taking them. This process is painful, because separation rarely feels comfortable. Human nature clings to familiarity even when familiarity is destroying growth. People become attached to environments, relationships, habits, and identities that once provided comfort. But destiny demands transformation, and transformation always requires sacrifice. Many people pray for elevation while resisting the process that produces it. They ask God to open greater doors while still holding tightly to the old life. But heaven cannot fully release purpose into hands that refuse to let go of what is already dying. God understands that some attachments become chains. Some people remain trapped not because they lack potential, but because they refuse to separate from what is poisoning their spirit. Separation is often misunderstood as punishment, but many times it is protection. God removes certain people because their presence would eventually damage the assignment attached to the chosen. Some relationships begin with peace, but slowly become distractions. Others drain spiritual energy until the chosen can no longer hear God clearly. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay permanently. Some people are lessons. Some are temporary assignments. Some are tests disguised as companionship. The hardest part about separation is that emotions do not immediately understand what the Spirit already knows. A chosen person may feel deep grief while God is actually rescuing them from destruction. They may cry over closed doors without realizing those doors were hiding danger behind them. Human vision sees loss while heaven sees protection. This is why trust becomes essential during painful transitions. God often begins the process of separation quietly. The chosen start feeling uncomfortable in places they once enjoyed. Conversations that once felt normal suddenly feel empty. Certain environments begin draining peace instead of producing it. The spirit becomes restless because heaven is creating distance between the chosen and their former season. Many ignore these warnings at first, because leaving familiar territory feels terrifying. There are relationships God must remove, because they are rooted in dependence rather than destiny. Some people only love the version of you that remains small, weak, and accessible to their control. The moment God begins changing you, tension appears. Jealousy surfaces. Misunderstandings increase. Support fades. This happens because not everyone benefits from your growth. Some people were comfortable only while you remained beneath your potential. The chosen often experience loneliness during seasons of separation because God intentionally creates distance from distractions. Isolation becomes a training ground where spiritual hearing sharpens. When noise disappears, the voice of God becomes clearer. Many people fear being alone because silence forces them to confront unresolved pain, hidden fears, and internal struggles they spent years avoiding. But healing often begins in places of solitude. Sacrifice is another part of spiritual alignment that many people try to avoid. Everyone desires breakthrough, but few want the surrender attached to it. Sacrifice means releasing control. It means choosing obedience even when emotions disagree. It means trusting God enough to walk away from temporary comfort for eternal purpose. Sacrifice often feels unfair in the moment because the chosen cannot yet see what God is building behind the scenes. Abraham understood sacrifice when God called him to leave everything familiar behind. Moses understood sacrifice when he abandoned the comfort of Pharaoh's palace. The disciples understood sacrifice when they left careers and security to follow Jesus. Every person used powerfully by God eventually faced a moment where obedience demanded painful surrender. Great purpose cannot exist without great sacrifice, because destiny requires complete alignment. The chosen sometimes mistake spiritual alignment for emotional happiness. But alignment is not always comfortable. Sometimes alignment feels like warfare, because the flesh resists change. Human desires fight against spiritual obedience. Fear argues against faith. Comfort argues against growth. The chosen feel pulled between who they used to be and who God is calling them to become. This tension creates internal battles that can feel overwhelming. One of the clearest signs that God is aligning someone for a new season is the death of old desires. Things that once consumed attention suddenly lose their power. Certain habits no longer satisfy. Some dreams begin fading because heaven is replacing human ambition with divine purpose. This process can feel confusing because the chosen may temporarily feel disconnected from both the old and the new. They no longer fit where they used to belong, but they have not fully stepped into the next chapter yet. Spiritual alignment also requires discipline. God cannot elevate people who refuse to develop self-control. The chosen must learn to guard their mind, emotions, words, and actions carefully during transitional seasons. One careless decision can delay progress. One moment of disobedience can create unnecessary pain. Alignment demands intentional living because destiny is too valuable to treat casually. There are moments when sacrifice involves releasing opportunities that appear good on the surface but are misaligned spiritually. Not every open door comes from God. Some opportunities are distractions sent to pull the chosen away from their assignment. Discernment becomes critical because the enemy often uses attractive alternatives to delay destiny. The chosen must learn to seek God's direction instead of blindly following what feels easy or immediately rewarding. Separation also reveals the true condition of the heart. When God removes support systems, hidden idols become exposed. Some people discover they depended more on relationships, money, validation, or comfort than they depended on God. These revelations can feel painful, but exposure creates opportunity for healing. God cannot fully align a person while hidden attachments still control them internally. The process of spiritual alignment often includes waiting seasons. Waiting tests motives. It tests patience. It tests faithfulness. Many people remain obedient while blessings are visible, but waiting reveals who truly trusts God during silence. The chosen may spend long periods feeling unseen, overlooked, or forgotten. Yet heaven uses hidden seasons to build character strong enough to sustain future responsibility. There are sacrifices that nobody laud publicly. The chosen may lose relationships they deeply valued. They may walk away from opportunities others envy. They may endure misunderstanding from people who cannot comprehend spiritual obedience. Following God often requires disappointing human expectations. The chosen must eventually decide whose approval matters more, the voice of the crowd or the voice of heaven. Spiritual alignment changes priorities completely. Prayer becomes necessary rather than optional. Discernment becomes survival. Peace becomes more valuable than popularity. The chosen stop chasing environments that damage their spirit. They begin protecting their energy carefully, because they recognize that every distraction carries spiritual consequences. Many people delay breakthrough because they keep returning to what God already told them to leave behind. They revisit toxic cycles hoping things will change without true transformation. But God does not bless disobedience simply because emotions feel attached. Obedience requires finality. Lot's wife looked backward and became trapped because her heart remained connected to what God was destroying. The chosen cannot move fully into destiny while emotionally chained to the past. There are moments during alignment when the chosen feel stripped of everything familiar. Old identities disappear. Previous routines collapse, relationships shift. Future direction feels unclear. This season can feel terrifying because God often removes visible security before revealing the next step. But faith grows strongest when certainty disappears. Dependence on God deepens when human control breaks apart. The pain of separation eventually produces clarity. What once felt unbearable later reveals itself as necessary. The chosen begin recognizing how certain relationships drained them, how certain environments weakened them, and how certain habits delayed growth. Distance creates perspective. Obedience creates peace. Sacrifice creates room for purpose to expand. God does not remove things randomly. Every separation serves a purpose connected to alignment. Every sacrifice prepares the soul for greater responsibility. Every painful transition carries hidden wisdom. The chosen are not losing everything. They are being repositioned for what heaven already prepared, long before they understood the process unfolding around them.